I'm here at Wembley Stadium, the home of English football. Happy times I had here at this ground, memories created with your football team. But today I'm here to speak about a darker side of the beautiful game, gambling. Now people have gambled on the sport of football for years. Who will win, who will score, will there be yellow cards? The list of things that people put their money on is absolutely endless. It can be fun, engaging, and you may even win a little bit of money too, so it makes sense why people do get into it. And gambling companies have realised this, with almost half of their revenue made over the past few years coming from football fans alone. So these gambling companies have taken complete advantage of this. They pay millions to have their logos plastered all across the sport of football. 7 out of 20 shirts in the Premier League this season have a gambling company as their front of shirt sponsor. The EFL, which covers Leagues 1, 2 and the Championship, has been sponsored by Sky Bet since 2013. In a single Premier League game broadcasted live on TV, thousands of betting logos appear, up to 3,500 of them. And in one of my own videos at last season's League 2 playoff final, hundreds of gambling logos appeared to me too. All of this added up can have a really dangerous effect. Around 1.4 million people are addicted to gambling in the country at the moment. It can ruin their relationships, finances, and even their lives as a whole. Tragically, around 400 people each year in the UK taking their own lives as a result of addiction to gambling. And of course, the constant advertising of gambling in football will only worsen this problem. Anyone can watch the sport, so children, even before the legal age to gamble, are introduced to the industry. Someone who's suffered from the effects of gambling is Brentford FC striker Toney. He was banned from all footballing activities for 8 months back in May 2023 after breaching the FA's betting rules. However, ironically, Brentford's current shirt sponsor is Hollywood Bet. You guessed it, a gambling company. It's clear that action needs to be taken against the advertisement of gambling in the sport of football. So, has anything been done so far? Well, from the 26-27 season onwards, Premier League teams will no longer be able to have gambling companies as their front of shirt sponsor. Of course, though, they can still have them on their sleeves, on the backs of their shirts, and everywhere around the stadium, so it doesn't make too much of a difference. Betting companies have tried to clean up their image, giving out safety warnings such as when the fun stops, stop. Many companies have also donated money to gambling charities in recent years. Between 2021 and 22, Betway donating £60,000, Unibet donating £90,000 and TCG Europe, who oversees sportsbet.io and Stake, giving £2,000. Of course though, these amounts make up just tiny fractions of these companies' huge profits. Many charities and organisations to help people who've been affected by gambling have been set up. One of those is The Big Step, who were founded a few years ago to campaign against all sponsorship and partnerships between UK football clubs and gambling companies. Over 30 English football teams have backed the cause, including Luton Town, Dulwich Hamlet and AFC Wimbledon. I spoke to their spokesman, Tom. What is the organisation The Big Step and why was it set up?
So The Big Step is a campaign to end all gambling advertising and sponsorship in football. And it was started by James Grimes about, when was it started? I think 2018, 2019, who's in recovery from gambling addiction himself. He found when he gave up gambling that essentially he couldn't watch football without being constantly sort of nudged to gamble and urged to gamble by all the advertising and the sponsorship and everything. So he sort of looked a bit deeper into it and found, exposed the level really behind of advertising and stuff in football. He had the idea then of sort of organising these big walks of people who've sort of been harmed by gambling, walking sort of from stadium to stadium to try and engage with the people at each club. Especially ones that take gambling money to sort of speak to them and basically lobby them to stop taking gambling sponsorship money.
Why do you think so many people get into gambling in the first place? For so many people, it's part of their match day routine. I'm an Arsenal fan, and inside the Emirates, we have little booths you can go into where you gamble. Why do you think so many people do it?
Yeah, I noticed a little Highbury sign in the background there, actually. I think I think just because the gambling industry has sort of hijacked football in a way, so it's using football as this sort of, this vessel essentially to create business, to create customers. Football is the most popular sport in the country. It's loved by a lot of young people. Young people are sort of statistically more at risk of addiction. So I think that the gambling industry has sort of implanted itself within football, um, because because it's a good market to get into. Essentially, the young men are at the highest risk of addiction. They have a high disposable income. So
Yeah.
if you entangle gambling and football, so they're almost sort of seem like the same thing, and that can be very profitable. Gambling on football can be very harmful, especially with the sort of apps and the way they are now, where it's not just a case of you bet on a team to win, lose, draw. You can bet on the first throw in, the even over or unders on cards, whatever. So it's obviously that can be very harmful and addictive, but the industry makes most of their money from sort of online slot and online casino games. So once you've signed up for a sort of free bet, maybe to put on the football, you'll be cross-sold these sort of highly addictive, dangerous online casino games that is where they make most of their money from.
You mentioned addiction there. How dangerous is it if it becomes an addiction? You hear so many tragic, in some cases, stories of people who have become addicted to it. How dangerous can it be?
Gambling addiction can be very dangerous because it's a recognized mental health condition, and it often requires specialized treatment. There's quite a few NHS clinics now that offer treatment, which is the best treatment there is. It's free, it's evidence based, but that wasn't always the case. It can lead to mental health issues such as anxiety, depression, insomnia. So people often think about gambling addiction in terms of the money, in terms of the money lost, because that's sort of quite easy to measure, isn't it? You can say, "Oh, how bad is it for you?" But actually, the financial bit is actually only very small. It's a little bit different to other addictions in that, if you knew someone that was addicted to alcohol, or I don't know, cocaine or another drug, it's quite easy to tell when they've been using those things. But with gambling, you could go and meet your friend in an hour and he could have gambled all of his money and borrowed a load of money and found money from elsewhere, and you wouldn't be able to tell. So it's dangerous as well because it's very easy to hide.
Turning our attention to the football clubs themselves, who are sponsored by these betting companies, some people may argue that it's such a big source of finance for them, especially some of the lower league clubs who rely on sponsorships for keeping their clubs afloat. What would you say to these critics? Where are football clubs uh, going to get these big sources of finance from instead?
Sure. Well, I think that's a sort of quite a common misconception actually, that it brings in a load of money. It obviously brings in some money, and gambling firms do tend to pay more than non-gambling firms for sponsorship deals. There was a report out a couple of years ago that found it was only 2.5%, the extra, essentially. So whilst the figures thrown around are quite big, probably, for example, I think West Ham will have a 6-year deal with Betway that's estimated to be worth up to £10 million a year. So £10 million a year to you or I is obviously big money, but to West Ham and the amount of money that's in football, it's not a huge amount. It's not as big a amount as people might think. There are clubs, the 36 clubs that support us don't take any money from gambling companies, and they survive, and yeah, they will continue to survive. If you look back sort of 30, 40, 50 years, there was cigarette companies sponsoring the Olympics and sponsoring F1, and they all came out with the same argument that Formula One won't survive without tobacco money, and it was fine. It's a very common argument they use, is that we sponsor these sports and these sports wouldn't survive without our money, so that people are sort of scared to do anything about it, and legislators and government won't do anything about it. But actually, it's not true.
We've heard MPs speak about the issue in Parliament before. Obviously, the Premier League have said they're going to ban front of shirt sponsorships from 2026. But lots of these, fixes to the problem still don't seem enough at all. So what other measures would you suggest, and what other measures are the big step trying to get put into
Well,
place?
so the big step, we're pushing for a complete ban on all gambling, advertising, and sponsorship in football. So that would obviously be a complete ban on shirt sponsorship. So as you sort of alluded to there, that the Premier League has they voluntarily agreed to a ban. I don't know about you, but if something is voluntary, it's probably not a ban. But they voluntarily agreed to a ban that is going to take place, I think, from the end of the season after next. It's only going to apply to the front of shirts. It's not going to apply to sleeves. It's not going to apply to anywhere else. It's not going to apply to the advertising hoardings in the stadium. It's not going to apply to the fact that, for instance, our national league, our football league, is sponsored by a gambling company. That won't be affected. It's obviously only going to apply to Premier League teams. It obviously needs to go further than that, but when that was announced, we were pleased because it is some recognition that actually gambling advertising is harmful. So that was a good thing. It was a step in the right direction.
Finally, what are the sort of next steps for your organization? Have you got anything planned for the future? And what can you see, how can you see this problem developing over the next few years?
It's begun to get more attention, hasn't it? Like I remember when I sort of started in this space, nobody was really talking about gambling, sponsorship, and advertising in football, but now it's beginning to get more recognition. Like I
Yeah.
just mentioned about the ban, or the voluntary ban for front of shirt sponsors. That is, that's an admission that this is a harmful thing that we're advertising, and we shouldn't be advertising it.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, and I wish you the best of luck with your campaign.
Thanks very much, Tom. Good to speak to you.
A petition addressed to the Prime Minister in regards to ending the relationship between gambling companies and football clubs has so far received almost 125,000 signatures, and it's clear that football fans want this problem kicked out of the sport, and I really hope that it is done so in the next few years. Make sure to let me know your thoughts on the situation down below in the comments section. Thank you very much to Tom for speaking with me in the interview, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.